"Get him out of here!" The words sliced through the construction site like a siren, loud, sharp, final. Heads turned. Hammers paused mid-air. A moment ago, it was just another Monday morning, the heat rising off steel beams, boots stomping dust, concrete mixers rumbling. But now, everything stopped. At the center of it all, two men locked in a stare that could bring a crane to a halt. One of them, Grant Delaney, lead site engineer, white, early 42nds, polished navy blazer under his safety vest, hard hat tilted with entitlement, the kind of man who walked through work sites like he owned the ground. The other, Malik Carter, black, late 32nds, wearing a faded gray t-shirt streaked with oil, work gloves still half on, steel-toe boots thick with dried mud, his blue helmet low over his brow. No name tag, no clipboard, just presence. And presence, apparently, was a threat. "You don't just walk onto my site and start staring people down like you run this place," Grant barked, stepping forward. "This is a high-risk zone. Show me credentials or get the hell out." Malik didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't blink. He just stood there, arms at his sides, as if the ground beneath his boots knew exactly who he was, even if no one else did. Grant's voice climbed. "What are you even doing here? Looking for scrap? You one of those day-rate guys from East Yard?" He smirked. "This isn't a soup kitchen, my friend." Laughter, awkward and unsure, rippled through the crew in orange vests standing nearby. Some looked down. One guy, young, maybe 20, reached for his phone, not to text, to record. Something didn't feel right. Malik finally raised his head, eyes steady, voice still silent. That's what unnerved them most. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't loud. He didn't beg or bark back. He just existed, calm, still, and undeniable. And that, to men like Grant, was the ultimate provocation. Grant jabbed a finger inches from Malik's chest. "You've got 5 seconds to move before I call security. Last warning." Silence. Then came the whisper from behind the cement mixer. "Who is that guy?" one of the workers asked. "No clue," someone muttered. "But he doesn't move like a temp." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Malik. He looked down at the finger in front of his chest, then looked back up. Still no word, still no fear, still there. Malik Carter didn't move. He didn't raise his voice, didn't lift a finger. He didn't have to. The tension held its breath around him. Workers stood frozen, uncertain whether to keep working or watch. One man adjusted his gloves twice without doing anything. Another pretended to check a measurement on his clipboard but kept glancing up. The only one who didn't flinch was Malik. He wore no badge, no suit, no fancy clipboard or earpiece, just a gray shirt, soaked at the shoulder from carrying rebar earlier that morning. Jeans with faint cement dust at the knees, gloves tucked into his back pocket, thumb hooked into his tool belt. And yet he didn't look like anyone's assistant. He looked like the air bent around him. 3 hours ago, Malik had walked in through the east gate without a word. No escort, no announcement. Just a nod to the security guard, a signature in the logbook, and a steady walk past the steel beams of Phase 2 construction. No one questioned him, not at first. He moved like he belonged, because he did. What no one knew, what Grant Delaney certainly didn't know, was that Malik Carter wasn't visiting. He wasn't auditing. He wasn't touring. He was watching. He built this project. From the blueprints to the budget, the $82 million contract signed by him. The delays last quarter, he solved them personally after the last manager was removed for racial misconduct. But he didn't announce himself this morning because Malik Carter had a rule. I want to see how people act when they think they're safe. And today, the site wasn't safe. Not for him, not for what he represented, and especially not for the man yelling in his face. Grant's voice came again, louder now. "Is anyone going to remove this man? Do I have to do it myself?" He turned to the line of workers behind him, eyes scanning for backup. None moved. One of them, Javier, a Mexican-American foreman in his late 42nds, looked at Malik, then back at Grant. He said nothing, but his silence spoke volume. Grant didn't notice. Or maybe he didn't care. His finger pointed again. "You don't belong here." That's when Malik's hand moved, not to swing, not to shove, but to slowly pull a black phone from his back pocket. Not flashy, no gold casing, just matte, practical. He unlocked it with a thumbprint and pressed a single button. The screen lit up. A name appeared, Jordan Ellis, Chief Operations Officer. But Grant didn't see it. Not yet. Grant Delaney was done pretending. He spun around to the junior supervisor behind him, lanky, pale, maybe 26, and snapped, "Who signed him in?" The supervisor fumbled with his tablet, panic spreading like a rash across his face. He came through East Gate, but there was no escort request submitted, so Grant cut him off. "Then call security. Right now. If protocol's breached, we shut it down." The kid hesitated. He looked at Malik, then at the workers, then at his own hands, and still didn't move. So Grant reached for his own radio. "Control, this is Delaney. I've got an unauthorized presence at Zone 3B, black male, no ID, refusing to leave." The word unauthorized rang heavy. The word black rang louder, and Malik heard every syllable, not because it was loud, but because it was familiar. He had heard it in Boston, 2011, when he was mistaken for janitorial staff in a boardroom he built. In Houston, 2014, when a valet tossed him the keys to someone else's car, assuming he was help. And now here. Again, Grant turned back, face flushed, self-righteous fury rising in his chest. "I don't care who you think you are," he barked. "You step onto this site without clearance, you're trespassing." Malik still didn't reply. Instead, he slipped the phone into his back pocket, then slowly reached into his front vest. Grant's hand hovered, ready to yell for backup until Malik simply pulled out a pen and small field notepad, black leather, worn, and began writing. "You mocking me now?" Grant sneered. But Malik said nothing. He was noting timestamps. At 9:46 a.m. Verbal escalation. At 9:48 a.m. False radio report. At 9:49 a.m. Misuse of site protocol, code 4B. By 9:50, Malik had closed the book. Behind them, the crowd grew thicker. Workers pretended to adjust toolkits. One cracked open a bottle of water, more for cover than thirst. Whispers hummed like a generator. Then, from the southeast scaffolding, a voice called down. "Is everything all right, Mr. Delaney?" It was Rachel, site coordinator, clipboard in hand. Grant waved her off. "Nothing to worry about, just clearing out a straggler." Rachel frowned, looked at Malik, hesitated. She'd seen him before, not just in pictures, but in the internal onboarding video from orientation. She mouthed something to herself, then her eyes widened. Grant turned back. "Final warning. You've got 10 seconds to get off this site, or I'll have you dragged out." Malik looked at his watch. 9:52 a.m. Then up at Grant. Then past him to Rachel, to the crew, to the line of workers now holding their breath like a silent jury. His voice finally came. Cool. Measured. Unshakable. "I suggest you stop the clock." No one spoke. Even the drills had stopped whining. The crane overhead slowed to a crawl. Someone muted the site radio, and yet, the tension grew louder. Malik Carter took a small step forward. Not aggressive, not challenging, just grounded. Grant stiffened. His stance widened, as if expecting a physical response, a shove, a curse, something to justify the anger already pouring from his pores. But Malik didn't raise his voice. He didn't touch him. He simply said, "I told you to stop the clock." His tone wasn't loud, but it carried, a ripple through concrete, a shift in the weight of the air. Grant blinked, then laughed loud, fake, brittle. "You threatening me now? Is that it? You gonna swing next? Let's go then." He took a step forward. Malik didn't move, didn't flinch. That stillness, that silence did more than yelling ever could, and the people around them felt it. Up near the portable trailer, 2 assistant site managers poked their heads out. "What's happening?" "No idea, but he's not budging." Down below, the young guy with the phone was still filming, slowly now, camera half down. Another worker whispered to him, "Don't post it yet." "Why?" "Because I think we're about to find out who he really islanded." Grant kept going, trying to fill the vacuum. "Look at you. You don't even belong on this crew. No uniform, no pass, no badge. Just another loudmouth with attitude." Malik glanced at him, a single look that shut the rest of the sentence down. Not rage, not pity, just clarity, like a man watching a mosquito brag before flying into a fan. Then Malik spoke again, low, intentional. "The first time someone underestimated me, I was 22. Just earned my PE license. Walked into a planning meeting and got mistaken for the delivery guy." He looked toward the cement mixer as if the memory was somewhere in the dust. "Second time? They assumed I couldn't afford the land I was bidding for, so they sold it under the table." He turned back to Grant. "Third time was today." Silence. A long, hard pause. Then, "And just like the first 2, you'll regret it." Behind him, Rachel was no longer on the scaffolding. She was walking toward him, clipboard still in hand, eyes wide, steps careful. "Sir, may I ask your name?" Grant scoffed. "Don't play into this." But Rachel didn't look at him. She only looked at Malik. And when he answered, the words weren't loud, but they broke the spell. "Carter. Malik Carter." The clipboard slipped from her hands, because she knew. The clipboard hit the gravel with a soft thud, but it may as well have been a thunderclap. Rachel's eyes locked on Malik. "Carter? As in, Carter Developments?" He didn't nod. He didn't have to. The name hung in the air like a dropped wrench. Behind her, two other coordinators froze mid-step. One of them, Elijah, ex-Google civil systems analyst turned construction planner, muttered under his breath, "Oh my God, we're standing on his site." Word spread fast. In construction, titles mean little. But ownership? That's holy ground. And the man standing in the middle of Zone 3B wasn't just a name on paperwork. He was the one who greenlit the foundation. The same man Grant Delaney just called a trespasser. Rachel bent down slowly to pick up her clipboard, hands suddenly unsure. She had joined the firm 6 months ago. At orientation, there were 5 names listed as board-level developers. One of them stood out. Malik J. Carter. She'd read his interview in Architect Weekly. She'd bookmarked the quote, "True leadership doesn't raise its voice, it raises the standard." Now, that same man was standing 10 feet from her, covered in dust, silent, calm, still raising the standard. Further down the lot, a buzz ignited. Workers whispered in waves, "That's him? The Carter? I thought he was older. Dude's got boots on, I thought he was a driver." One worker, Carlos, who'd been on site since Phase 1, pulled off his hard hat and held it at his chest. "Mierda, I was here the day he walked the foundation." Others started putting the pieces together. The calm, the confidence, the silence that wasn't submission. It all made sense now. And Grant? He was the last one to get it. "Wait, what the hell are you people whispering about?" Rachel turned to him slowly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried more weight than his ever had. "That's the founder. You just filed a security violation against the man who signed your contract." Grant blinked once, twice, then turned pale. "Number that can't." Elijah stepped up beside Rachel. "You said he had no clearance, but he's got more clearance than all of us combined." "Huh." One of the site engineers pulled out their phone, scrolling fast, and turned the screen around. There it was. Malik Carter, principal executive, Carter Dev. Same face, same eyes, different clothes. The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was calculation. Everyone on that lot, from crane operators to interns, was reassessing where they stood, who they'd sided with, what they'd just witnessed. And Rachel, clipboard clutched like a shield, said softly, "We were wrong. Malik looked around, at the faces, at the shifting weight, at the quiet awakening. Then, with zero theatrics, he said, "The only thing worse than being underestimated is being surrounded by people who wait to see who's powerful before they act right." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Grant Delaney's face flushed with something deeper than embarrassment, panic wrapped in ego. He shook his head hard, trying to laugh it off, trying to grab hold of the narrative that had just slipped through his fingers. No, I don't care who we island." The words hit the air like a loose cable, sparking, reckless. "You can't just show up looking like that and expect protocol to bend." Silence. Rachel frowned. Elijah raised an eyebrow. Even the intern holding the phone took a half step back. But Grant wasn't done. "This isn't about race. It's about procedure." He pointed again at Malik. The finger that once dripped confidence now trembled just enough to be noticed. "You come onto my site with no badge, no escort, no prior notice, and now everyone's supposed to bow down?" Malik stayed still. Grant continued digging. "You think because you've got some name on a contract that makes you untouchable? That makes this your site?" This time, Malik spoke. "It doesn't make it mine, Grant. It is mine." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut cleaner than Grant's yelling ever could. And that shook him. "This is how it starts," Grant muttered, pacing now. "One man changes the dress code. Next thing you know, we've got chaos on site. No hierarchy, no discipline." Carlos, standing near the scaffold, crossed his arms. "Or maybe we finally get some respect on site." Grant heard that and snapped. "Respect? I've run over 50 builds across 3 states. Nobody questioned my methods until today." He turned back to Malik, eyes wide. "And you? You think walking in here in work boots and a dirty shirt makes you relatable? Number? It makes you manipulative." He took a step forward, too close, too loud, too late. Malik didn't back down. He didn't blink. But the people around them, they did. Rachel lowered her clipboard again, voice now steel beneath silk. Enough, Grant. Grant turned. Excuse me? You've said more in the last 10 minutes than most racists say in 10 years. The words hung. No one cheered. No one laughed, because they all knew it was true. Even the young guy with the phone slowly ended the recording, not because the story was over, but because the verdict had landed. Malik finally moved, just one step forward. The reason I came here today dressed like this is because I don't need to be seen to have power. But apparently, you need a suit to see it. Another step. You've had multiple complaints filed against you this quarter alone. I read every one, and I came to see for myself if they were exaggerated. Another step. Now just inches apart. They weren't. Grant tried to reply. Words formed, then died. His authority had drained from his voice, from his body, from the air. He looked around and no one stood with him. No engineers, no interns, no team, just silent, and the echo of his own downfall. There's a moment just before someone self-destructs where even they can feel it. Grant Delaney was standing on that edge, sweating through his collar, breathing shallow, surrounded by silence he couldn't control. And then, he did what desperate men always do when their words stop working. He used his hands. Grant lunged forward and jabbed Malik in the chest, two stiff fingers, hard and loud, like he was pressing a button to make the man disappear. You think you're in charge? Let me be clear, you're done here. Gasps broke out like ripples on a still pond. Rachel flinched. Carlos muttered, "Oh no." The intern with the phone raised it again fast. Elijah stepped forward, already pulling out his own badge to radio legal, because that touch had changed everything. Malik didn't move, didn't shove back. He just looked down at the two fingers that had dared to make contact, then back up, slow, cold, surgical. You just made your biggest mistake. His voice was quieter than before, like a whisper sharpened into a blade. Grant tried to speak again, but no sound came, because Malik had already pulled his phone from his back pocket. No theatrics, no threats, just a tap. Conference call. Legal plus HR plus site safety. This is Malik Carter, he said clearly for everyone to hear. Initiating immediate protocol under Section 6.1 Hostile Workplace Escalation. Grant blinked. The words meant nothing to him, but they meant everything to the people who knew the code. Rachel stepped back. Elijah nodded slowly. The site supervisor, now pale, began texting furiously. As of now, Malik continued, Grant Delaney is suspended from all site responsibilities, pending termination review. Grant snapped out of his shock. You can't. That's not how this works. Malik didn't look at him. He looked at the crowd. Let me be very clear for the record. He turned back, eyes locked. I'm not firing you because you insulted me. I'm firing you because you put your hands on someone in front of 30 witnesses, violated 3 site safety protocols, and confirmed every complaint lodged against you in less than 10 minutes. A beat, but mostly, I'm firing you because you don't belong here. Someone exhaled hard, a sound between relief and revelation. Carlos turned to the others, voice low but steady. About damn time. The tension in the air didn't break, it shifted. From fear to justice. From doubt to order. From Grant to Malik. Grant stood frozen, eyes darting, mouth half open, but no one was looking at him anymore. They were all looking at the man in the oil-stained shirt, standing firm, holding power without raising his voice. Malik turned to Rachel. Get him escorted out. Quietly, with dignity, he's not worth a scene. And just like that, the man who tried to humiliate someone in front of everyone got removed with everyone watching. But no one said a word, because dignity doesn't need applause. It just needs to win. As Grant was led away, shoulders tight, eyes down, Malik didn't watch him go. He didn't need to, because the real work had just begun. He turned toward Rachel, voice calm but firm. Pull up today's live schematics. I want a full feed of active zones 3 amperes through 4C. She blinked, nodding fast. Yay. Yes, sir. Loop and safety control. I want timestamps and incident logs for the past 2 hours. Already on it. Elijah stepped in. Legal's confirming breach reports. Want me to initiate full review? Not yet. Let me walk it myself first. Malik pulled out a small earpiece from his vest pocket, clipped it on, and tapped his phone twice. Activate Blackline protocol. Full visibility. Shadow mode off. Within seconds, the site's internal security system lit up from grainy wall monitors to sleek tablets in supervisors' hands. Workers could see Malik's ID now, live, glowing with internal clearance. Across every interface on site, the words appeared, Executive Override, M. Carter authorized access level 5. The same people who doubted him minutes ago, now they watched his name appear on every screen. Not whispered, not assumed, confirmed. He walked through Zone 3B like he had built it from muscle memory because he had. Javier, he called toward the older foreman. Your crew's been pulling 12 seconds for 3 weeks. Why? Javier stepped forward, hat in hand. Schedule drift, sir. Delaney kept pushing deadlines without adjusting manpower. Malik nodded. No more. Your team's now on regulated rotation. Payroll adjusts immediately. A sigh of relief swept through the crew behind him. Small, subtle, but real. He moved to the main planning table, fingers dancing across the layout. This foundation line is off by a meter. Elijah leaned in. That's what I was going to say this morning, but he overrode you. Yes, that ends today. And Rachel returned, tablet in hand. Mr. Carter, Control has flagged audio footage Grant used racially coded language in his radio call. Save it, timestamp it, lock it under legal review. She hesitated. Should we notify HQ? Malik looked up, eyes sharp. Not yet. I want this cleaned first. Quietly, effectively. We don't correct chaos with spectacle, we correct it with standards. The workers, watching all this unfold, began moving differently. Back straighter, steps lighter, eyes less guarded, because the site had changed. Not with sirens, not with a press conference, but with one man restoring the very order that others tried to steal from him. As Malik passed a crew resetting rebar grids, one young worker stepped out of line, nervous, barely out of his 20s. Sir, can I just say that was... He struggled for the word. Malik didn't make him finish. You don't have to say anything. He smiled just once and walked on, because leadership isn't about the noise you make. It's about the silence you restore. Malik stood on the raised walkway overlooking the entire site. Dust still floated in the morning Sunday. Cranes resumed their slow dance in the background, and yet all eyes remained on him. Rachel, Elijah, the crew leads, even the interns, they weren't just watching a man. They were watching a message. He adjusted the earpiece in his ear, tapped into the loudspeaker system, and spoke not shouting, not barking orders, but addressing. Some of you are wondering why I walked onto this site, in boots, with no announcement. His voice echoed over steel and silent. It wasn't to trick anyone, or test them. He paused. It was to see them. Workers stopped what they were doing. Forklifts paused mid-turn. Even the humming backup generator seemed to lower its hum. Malik looked across the platform, then back down to where the confrontation had unfolded earlier. When I wear a suit and walk into a boardroom, people shake my hand before they ask my name. When I wear boots and walk into my own construction site, he let that sentence hang. Everyone knew how it ended. Respect based on appearance, he continued, isn't respect. It's performance. And performance doesn't build foundations. Integrity does. He glanced at the young worker who had tried to speak earlier, then at Carlos, who was now leaning on a beam, nodding slowly. Today wasn't an ambush, it was an audit. Not of numbers, but of culture. A few heads lowered, a few shoulders stiffened. Not out of guilt, but realization. I wanted to know how my sites breathe when I'm not looking. Because power isn't in presence, it's in how people behave when no one's watching. Elijah turned to Rachel, whispered, he's not just building structures, he's building a standard. Rachel nodded, eyes never leaving Malik. That's what leadership looks like. Malik stepped down from the platform, slow, deliberate. As he walked, he nodded to people by name. Javier, I haven't forgotten what you did during the winter delays. Monique, your redesign of the East Corridor framing saved us 2 weeks. Quietly, efficiently, eyes widened. He'd been paying attention all along, even when no one knew he was watching. He reached the edge of the lot and turned one last time. This project is more than cement and steel. It's proof that excellence doesn't need to announce itself, it simply shows up, even in dusty boots and a plain shirt. He looked toward where Grant had been taken, and if someone can't recognize excellence unless it looks like them, they don't belong on this team. The crew stood still, not because they were waiting for orders, but because they were realizing they weren't just working on a structure, they were part of a statement. When Malik walked off that platform, he left behind more than a shift change. He left behind a reckoning. Rachel stood motionless near the central trailer. Her clipboard, so often a shield, hung limp at her side. She stared at the ground where the confrontation had happened, playing the moment back in her head. I knew his face, she whispered. I recognized him, and I still didn't speak up. Aliyah stepped beside her, voice low. You froze, we all did. No, she said. We watched. and waiting to see how it played out is still choosing a side. Across the lot, the young intern Marcus scrolled through the video he'd recorded earlier. His thumb hovered over the post button, but he didn't press it. Not yet, because the question that filled his head wasn't, will this go viral? It was, why didn't I step in when it counted? His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, from the weight of regret. He'd seen what was wrong. He'd heard every word Grant said, and still, he let the camera roll, instead of speaking up. Javier sat on an overturned toolbox, elbows on knees. He'd seen this before, not this exact moment, but this kind of moment. I was 19, he told the crew around him. Boss pushed a Dominican guy off a scaffold, blamed it on clumsiness. I stayed quiet. He looked across the site. Now I'm almost 50, and I almost stayed quiet again. No one responded, because every man there had their own version of that silence. Moments they wished they could rewind. In the shade of the east barrier wall, a welder named Denise wiped her goggles and leaned against the metal siding. He was right, she muttered. Her partner, Dev, tilted his head. About what? About power. I thought I was doing my job, staying neutral. But neutral, when someone's being humiliated, isn't neutral, it's permission. Every corner of the site buzzed with a quiet guilt, not toxic, not loud, just heavy. Because the truth was undeniable. They hadn't stood up. They hadn't asked who Malik was. They hadn't questioned why Grant was yelling. They hadn't needed to see a title to know someone was being treated unfairly. But they waited anyway. And in waiting, they chose silence over courage. Back near the temporary exit gate, Marcus finally lowered his phone and muttered, I'm not going to post it. Rachel looked up. Why not? Because it's not our story to monetize. He turned to the others. It's a mirror, and we've all got to sit with it first. In the middle of that stillness, Malik's voice returned to them, not through a speaker this time, but echoing in their heads. Power isn't about being seen. It's about how you move when you think no one's watching. Today, they moved like people who'd been watched, and didn't like what was seen. By 11:45 a.m., the site was back in motion. Cranes turned, welders sparked. Steel groaned. But it wasn't just the machinery that had reset, it was the atmosphere. Where earlier there had been a fog of tension, now there was clarity. No more side eyes. No more pretending not to hear. People greeted each other, looked each other in the eye, spoke with intention. The silence that had once screamed complicity, now it hummed with quiet accountability. Rachel moved through the coordination tent like a woman with new spine. She was already drafting a new on-site conduct protocol, even before legal sent theirs. No one asked her to, but she knew it was overdue. Every crew orientation, she said, will now start with a segment on dignity. Period. Elijah glanced over. You sure they'll approve it? She looked at him. They don't need to. I've already implemented it. Javier returned to his post with his crew this time, really leading. Breaks are breaks. No more skipping lunches to meet fake deadlines. Carlos Lauchet. Look at you, acting like a foreman again. Javier didn't smile. He just nodded. No more silence. Even Marcus, the intern, stood taller. He'd written an email to himself the night before, planning to quit the industry altogether. Now, he was sketching a new idea for a safety awareness app, one that included anonymous reporting, audio triggers, and real-time escalation protocols. He showed it to Denise. We could call it Quiet Power. She smiled. He'd like that. Back near the site's edge, a temporary break area had formed. Workers leaned on crates, sipping from thermoses, talking not about sports or gossip, but about what happened. Not in shame, in growth. We let it happen, someone said. Yeah, but we don't have to let it happen again, another replied. And Malik? He hadn't said a word in 20 minutes. He simply walked the perimeter, checked in on materials, inspected foundations. To the untrained eye, he looked like any other man on site. But everyone trained their eyes differently now. They saw him fully. Not because he asked to be seen, but because he showed them who they really were, and then gave them the chance to become better. At noon, Rachel stepped onto the central platform and tapped the mic. As of today, this site resumes full operations under the leadership of Mr. Malik Carter. Not cheers, no claps, just a wave of nods, slow and steady. Not from obligation, from respect earned. Malik walked past Rachel on his way down. She whispered, "Was that the plan all along?" He paused, then said, "The plan was to see if this place could build more than a building." Then he walked off, and somehow every beam felt straighter, every wall stronger. Because now, they weren't just building for him, they were building with him. Weeks passed. The site neared completion, walls sealed, windows set, steel locked in place. But what people remembered most wasn't the engineering. It was the morning power changed hands without a shout. Malik Carter never posted about it. There were no press releases, no victory laps. But within 3 days, Grant Delaney's name disappeared from all site records. By the end of the week, his resignation was quietly accepted. No severance, no appeal. Justice didn't need to scream. It just needed to show up in work boots. Word spread through the industry, not through scandal, but through whispers of respect. Carter, he walks his sites himself. Doesn't need security. Doesn't need a nameplate. But you'll know who's in charge, trust me. Oh, back at the project, Malik returned one last time before handoff. Same boots, same shirt, same quiet presence. He met with Rachel, with Elijah, with Javier and the senior crew. No lecture, no ceremony. He handed out cards, not business, but personal. On the back, embossed in small type. Power is how you treat people when you don't need anything from them. He shook hands. He looked people in the eye. He remembered their names. Then he turned to Marcus, the intern who once stood frozen, phone in hand. You stayed silent when it counted, Malik said, not unkind. What matters now is what you do next. Marcus swallowed hard. I want to build better. Malik smiled. Then you already are. As he exited the gate, one worker turned to another and said, he changed the whole site without shouting once. The other replied, yeah, that's what real power sounds like. And so the man they once mistook for a laborer, the man who let himself be humiliated to reveal the truth, the man who never raised his voice, walked away not just as a CEO, but as a blueprint for dignity, for justice, for a new way to lead. Before we close, ask yourself, what do you do when no one's watching? Because that more than title, uniform, or name is what tells the world who you really are.